Hi everyone. Today I would like to take you back in time and discuss one of the greatest Peruvian mysteries from the past. We will talk about the Inca who discovered Oceania. Well, this story was recopilated by several different chroniclers from the colonial times, from the period right after the arrival of the conquistadors. We're talking about the first decades after the conquest of Francisco Pizarro. And these stories were recopilated by chroniclers who were also able to find lots of interesting new things about this territory that now can be easily contrasted with history and archaeology. So those chronicles were based on facts, a legend, let's say, by these chroniclers, and that's why not really much attention was paid to the history behind this story. Today we will talk about the interesting voyage, the trip Túpac Yupanqui, Inca Túpac Yupanqui did, presumably, to Oceania. So, the chronicler is really interesting because it takes us back to, first of all, a time in history that can be traceable nowadays, and that's the period of Inca Tupac Yupanqui, in particular, the period when he was not yet an Inca king. So his father, Pachacutec, who is known as the first emperor of the history of the Incas. The Incas, this is basically going a little bit back in time to the Incan period, and also to the chronology and genealogy of the Incas. So the Incas, according to specialists, had, well, 14 kings in total. Two of them basically they fought for the crown, let's say, during the time of the, also parallel to the time of the conquest of this territory, Huáscar and Atahualpa. So the father of them both, Huayna Capac, presumably died due to a exposure to a European disease. So that also killed the probably the person chosen by him, according to some specialists, to actually be the successor. This heir died also from the same disease of his dad. And before Huayna Capac, we have Túpac Yupanqui. So this king, this Inca king, and his father, Pachacutec, they are basically the generators of the great expansion of the Incan Empire, into levels that, well, now are also sort of like comparable with the expansion of, for example, Alexander the Great in Europe, over Europe and Asia. So the Tawantinsuyo, which is the name of this realm, of this kingdom, of the empire of the Incas, was so big that reached out, well, in north, south of Colombia, south west of Colombia, a big part of Ecuador, Peru, coast, and is mainly a part of the jungle in the south of Bolivia, Chile, and Argentina. So basically, six countries were influenced at some point by the Inca. So before Pachacutec, we have a series of Incas who are more difficult to be traceable, let's say, like in history. So this is sort of like a time that is sometimes even melt with mystery and sort of like mythology as well, no? So, well, Pachacutec, father of Túpac Yupanqui, was also, according to some specialists, the builder of Machu Picchu. So probably you know him better from that side, or at least you hear about Machu Picchu. So, well, his son was in a way also a consolidator of the empire Pachacutec was creating. By the way, the person who was chosen to be the successor of Pachacutec was another Inca, actually, Amaru Yupanqui. But according to the chronicles, Amaru Yupanqui was not really fit for the role, and he was removed from his position. And that's the moment when Túpac Yupanqui takes place, and he was really a great man. So he was a leader, he was a traveler, he was an adventurous man. So also there is a possible connection between, like, for example, him and the construction of Sacsayhuaman, which is in Cusco and was known usually as the fortress of Sacsayhuaman. So he was a consolidator of the faith also of the Incas, because the Incas were in process of expansion. Like the Inca Empire lasted for about 100 years, and even though the Inca culture can be traced back to the 12th century, to the 1100s, and the empire is something different. Like it's the expansion time, no? It's the time of adding different societies and groups, ethnic groups, and languages and religions under the umbrella of the Inca. And the Inca had their own religion. They were worshippers of the sun. They were the children of the sun. So Túpac Yupanqui, well, in this process of expansion, so he brought like human groups, like of Inca people to different locations to consolidate that new faith and culture. And also, well, they were very, very willing to learn from the local people from that they conquer, the techniques of construction and new knowledge like that they could acquire from those places. And well, that's how they also grew so fast, so soon, using the Inca trails, for example, that some of them already existed way before them, thanks to the Wari culture. That, well, it was also one of the greatest cultures, societies we had in pre-Hispanic Peru. So they were able to reach out like very, very far away locations. So, well, I just want to give you an idea about basically the extent of the Inca Empire, but also the importance of Túpac Yupanqui, even in the time before being an Inca. So in his time as Auki, or prince, he was a warrior, and he also was, as I said before, very, very adventurous. So he, in his time as, let's say, prince and a warrior, he moved first in direction to the north, to the north coast and North Andes. He even reached out what nowadays is Ecuador, and he gained for his father Guayaquil, for example. He went up to Manta, in nowadays Ecuador. And well, he was really, really surprised and amazed by the new technologies he found there, and also the expertise of the indigenous peoples of the coast, well, the Yungas territory, the coast section, in sailing, like the knowledge these indigenous people had about like sailing was something like incredible for a man from the Andes. Túpac Yupanqui was from Cusco. Incas are mainly associated with the Andes territory, and well, that was really something so new and so well, new things, that he was able to see and learn there. So, well, basically, in Manta, he discovers these very sophisticated vessels, like ship-like balsas that were really, really new. And the name, these ships, so well, they were not really ships, but they were quite big. This rafts were name was Wampu. So they were Wampus, and they were also much little ones that were called Marca Wampus. So those wampus, those very very big transportations on the sea, like vessels, were so sophisticated that Túpac Yupanqui wanted to learn more and also wanted to go where those ships were going. So we know very well about the appearance those wampus have, thanks to the conquistadors and thanks to their observations on them. The Spanish, when they came to the Peruvian territory, they even reached northern into South America, they realized that the indigenous people of this section, they were avid, like not just fishermen, sailors, and that they were able to go far away distances, like long distances. So they realized that even the local ships were as good, as efficient, or maybe even better than the European ones. These ships were able to sail with the current. They also had sails, basically. So they also had what in Spanish is called timon, or in English, rudder. So these rudders, the indigenous names of them were the guaras. The guaras are these sort of like sticks that are in the bottom. Let's say that they are movable. They are necks basically on the sides of the ship, left and right, and they are very very long. They go deep into the water, and they are sort of like rattles in the sense that they move the ship according to the current. So the ships can be moved not just by the wind, because the ships have sails, but also they have rattles that are into the water. So in that way, they can utilize at their benefit the winds and the current. And here in this territory, we have a current called Humboldt. This is the current that passed all the coast of Peru, also Chile as well. This is a very, very rich current of water. Humboldt current is also quite cold, and the temperature is about around 16 degrees centigrade. So that's really chilly current, and it's very rich in sea life. It's rich in plankton, and therefore rich in fish. And that's another story. But basically, this current is very particular because it comes from the extreme south of planet Earth and goes parallel to, as I said before, Chile, Peru, and in the limit between Ecuador and Peru, it turns, like to the west, and it really passes near the Galapagos Islands, and it goes into, let's say, the islands of the Pacific, Polynesia, and that current also returns now to the east until it comes back to the continent. So this is the natural movement of this current. It's really fascinating. It's actually the reason why the coast of Chile and the coast of Peru is desertic, it's a desert, because it's such a cold current. The ocean sort of like drops down the temperature of the atmosphere, because in theory we in the coast of Peru should be more tropical because we are close to the equator. We are right next to the equator. So anyways, going back to the story of our Inca, Túpac Yupanqui, he discovered, according to these chronicles, that these indigenous people from that territory were able to sail long distances, and that they also acquire in those trips like different type of treasures. So it seems that Túpac Yupanqui was quite fascinated with the fact that they were able to go to the west. And that's because, according to the Incan tradition, there was a connection between the west, and which is deep in the sea, and the home of the most important god of the Incan pantheon, which is Huiracocha. Oh, Apu Contixi Huiracocha Pachaya Chaching Pachacamac, that's the long name of the god, was basically in few words the creator of the world. He was the most important god for the Incas. So it seems that, Inca, Auki Prince, was, according to specialist historian and person also who proposed this very interesting theory, Antonio del Busto, 25-year-old more or less man, very young, in the peak of his youth and beauty. He was like ready for an adventure. So what he wanted to do first with this interesting possible trip, that because he want to go to the distance, he want to go to the unknown, and he knew these people, at least from what they said, well, they were able to sail in that direction, and also that there was something there. There were islands in the distance. He just want to know. He want to see what was, like in that side. Probably finding the home of his father, deity father, Huiracocha. So, what is interesting is that the legends that were presented to him by these people was that they constantly traveled there. They were able to see people also in the distance. There were different peoples there, a lot of wealth far away. So, Túpac Yupanqui was not really sure about if this was true or not. So he consulted to a visionary man, to a shaman, a person of his trust. His name was Antarqui. And Antarqui, seems that he had the power, the superpower, and granted by the gods of flying and see, for example, different places. So the story mentions that Antarqui was able to fly to those islands because he wanted to know Túpac Yupanqui if those islands existed. So Antarqui flew to those islands and returned back to the Inca and said, yes, indeed, there are islands far away, and there is, different people there, and there's lots of, wealth in those islands awaiting for you. So, which is really interesting. So, how come Antarqui was able to fly? Seems that Túpac Yupanqui didn't care much about how he was able to fly, because right after that revelation, Túpac Yupanqui embarked to the distance, embarked to the adventure. So probably the explanation of this, like a flying story, is that Antarqui was given some form of hallucinogenicals, which shamans still use here in Peru and in the jungle and in the Andes also, and in the coast, to heal different forms of diseases or for tail or so on. So we still use those medicines until these days, these psychotropics. So ayahuasca, San Pedro, for example. That's how we believe Antarqui was able to those islands, even though he was not really able to travel in person. So Túpac Yupanqui organized a huge group of people, of people from nowadays Ecuador, Manta, Manteños, indigenous from that location. The problem is basically how many people accompanied Túpac Yupanqui. So according to the chronicles, and by the way, I was not able yet to say the name of the chronicles. I have them here with me: Martín de Murúa, Pedro Sarmiento de Gamboa, Miguel Cabello de Balboa. Those three chroniclers were the ones who made notes on this story, on this narrative, and they also, even though they don't really write a lot about this story, they mention really interesting details, and they all have like pretty much the same story. They mention that first of all, the islands that were visited by Túpac Yupanqui were two. And the names of those islands were Awachumbi and Ninachumbi. Okay, Awachumbi probably referring, this is from the Quechua, to an island that was far, far away, really, really far away. And the other one, Ninachumbi. Nina comes from the Quechua word fire, and probably is related with an island that had like fire, some form of fire within, or volcanoes. So well, that could be like the possibility. So they mention those three, all of those three chroniclers. Túpac Yupanqui visited two islands, Awachumbi and Ninachumbi. About 20,000 people follow him, which is really a big number, like probably too exaggerated, or it eventually got exaggerated by the passing of the time. Like Túpac Yupanqui probably this trip around the year 1465, according to Del Busto. He was 25 years old. He was born about around the year 1440. So well, probably like the time that passed until like these chroniclers were able to recollect these stories, about 100 years, like made the epic like bigger, more grandiose. So a more realistic number, according to Del Busto, could be about 2,000 people probably joining this quest or this venture, and that probably means that, thinking on the wampus or these vessels, these balsas, that according to chronicles of the time when the Spanish came, mentioned that some of them could fit in about like 50 people, some of them 20 people. So let's say that about 150 of these wampus were able to be taken on the travesty. And also thinking that Túpac Yupanqui didn't really have much time to organize such expedition when he was in that territory. So everything was done like fast and what was available. So these ships probably or were constructed either like in the moment or were already there, or made from wood, like balsa wood. That's a type of wood, by the way, balsa. And this wood is like cork. It's very lightweighted. So that's really a possibility how they were able to make them fast, and also well, they float very well, and they had to last for a long time. We're talking about a travesty of months, of like long time. And how we know, like, it was months, like, well, the chroniclers don't mention this in detail, but there was a person who in the 1940s, well, actually, like 7 persons, but one of them was the leader or the precursor of this group, Thor Heyerdahl, a Norwegian man. I think he was a geologist. Well, basically, he was a very interesting man, an adventurous man, who, with his team, created this, first of all, like interesting, say, ship, or sorry, like balsa or raft, and he was able to cross the Pacific, most of the Pacific, with it, just using the Humboldt current. So he made it from reed, from totora reed mainly, also with wood. So he thought that from his experience, probably these balsas, they also had reed in them, and probably they carry also enough material for replacing these like the rotting parts that needed to be replaced on the sea. So well, we're talking about like over 2,000 people, about 150 ships, and one of them carried the great Inca prince. Um, so, well, the story also, according to the chronicles, mentions that, well, this was a really successful prophecy, and also Túpac Yupanqui was able to return with black people, no, who were confused with Africans, by the chroniclers. I mean, they didn't see them, but they were described by the indigenous who told them these stories that they were black. So the only black the Spanish knew at that point were the ones from Africa. Um, so black people, and also, there's a mention of gold, a gold chair, and also skin and bones, mainly bones or remains from horses, or an animal that looked, at least to the indigenous, like a horse. Okay, so at the time, by the way, of Túpac Yupanqui, horses were not seen here, people, but because they came with the Spanish. So probably the remains were brought in from this prophecy by Túpac Yupanqui. Well, were of an animal that was quite big and maybe could be confused by a horse, at least from the bones. hmm Um, so, well, this story says that Túpac Yupanqui returned. So, but where he went, well, so that's really the mystery, and why we believe he went to Oceania. So, well, Antonio del Busto had a very interesting theory that also, in a way, can be proved by the local traditions and legends in the places where he believes Túpac Yupanqui was able not just to see from the distance, also to touch ground, to be there, to mix with the locals, to stay with the locals, and the impact of his presence in those places was such that, well, there are legends that still exist from that visit. So his theory, and this little talk is about the theory of this man, this Peruvian historian. His theory is that Túpac Yupanqui was able to travel approximately 17,000 kilometers in total. That's the grand trip, from start in Manta until returning to Peru. Probably no less than 6 months of travesy in total, visiting at least 3 locations in the Pacific, 3 islands in the Pacific. Okay, but keep in mind that according to the story, or to the legend, there are 2 islands only mentioned. Maybe because those were the most beautiful, those were the biggest, the most important. But Antonio de Busto found out in 3 islands, not just 2, the presence of legends that mention Túpac Yupanqui, or basically Túpac only, or Túpac. No? So, well, the first of these islands, I'm trying also to read the names so that way I will not forget about the names or mispronounce them. The first one is the island Nuku-Iva, which belongs to the Marquesas Islands. And in that island of the Pacific, there is a story of the King Tupac. Okay, so Tupac sounds quite familiar. By the way, Tupac, Quechua, Tupac, means the resplendent one. And Yupanqui, so the name, the kite. So, well, seems that in this location, he was just remembered as Tupac. So, well, the legend of this island of Nuku-Iva mentions that a long time ago, there was a king named Tupac who visited them from the east. Hmm? And well, this king visit them, and he was like a very knowledgeable man and knowledgeable, and he decided to make an altar for his god, okay, for the main god he worshipped, and which was the sun, or the god sun. So well, he made an altar that well, it's no longer existing, but the tradition says that existed in the island. And well, the legend says that he had to do it overnight because he just had one night to be there. So he asked his sister, the name of his sister was Ahina, to sort of like tell him, like advise him when the sun was about to come out. Also, because it was supposed to be ready before the sun came out, because it was for the sun of this altar. So, well, Ahina was sort of like very tired, seems like tired, and she fell asleep while her brother was making this altar. So she woke up in a moment during the night, and she thought the sun was coming out because of seems that the reflection of the moon in the white sand there. So she woke up, and well, she was very very afraid, you know, of sort of like them doing things wrong. So she called her brother, and thinking that the sun was coming out, and she said the following words: "A otupa, a otupa," which means Tupa, it's morning already. So that's the moment when Tupa, very, very, of course, sad for not finishing his work and being so late, he immediately went fast uh, to the ship and with his men and continued his trip with his sister. Well, curious story, no? So we have here the presence of Tupa for really, really a short time, short minutes, and this sort of like altar. By the way, in the Polynesia, there are beautiful altars always constructed by the indigenous peoples of those locations, Polynesian groups. Those altars are named Marae. Mhm. And there's something very curious because the Incas also built altars. They tend to call them Ushnus. So, and they were also before the Incas. Other societies that had also these Ushnus, these spaces like altars for the sun, for the gods, for offerings. So there is something there in common we have. I'm not saying that, well, the Incas taught the Polynesians to do marais, sorry, but there is a very interesting coincidence there, and also the legend mentioning like Tupa just coming from the east and trying to build an altar and just going like away as fast as he could because the sun was coming out. It's just curious. And then we have well, another island where seems that there is a presence of such like king again, like Tupa, this person, but this time in the Gambier Islands. The name in particular of this island, you can find it even better as Mangareva Island. From pictures I've seen, paradise. And there is a legend also in that site of a king, Tupa again, who had red skin. So if you are able ever to see pictures of the people from the Andes of Peru, you're going to see that our skin is heavily pigmented, and also our pigmentation turns to be like reddish, somehow higher pigmentation, some have lesser pigmentation, and that might be related with mestizaje, mixing with different ethnic groups. But the people that are like the purest in terms of indigenous DNA, they have like this beautiful red skin, and the higher they live, the more exposed to sun radiation, the redder. So well, if you see also pictures from Polynesians, you see there is a difference in color, even though we are like pigmented, we are dark skin, but there's different type of tonality there. So well, to the locals, this King Tupac looked red skin. Hmm? And well, he also visited the island with hundreds or many balsas, many wampus, and well, he was a worshipper of a god that is also like basically like Tiki. Tiki is a god that in Polynesia is considered well the an element that is shared culturally and religiously and spiritually. And it's so curious to see that Tiki sounds to me pretty much the well to the name, the full name of Viracocha, because remember that the full name of Viracocha is Apu Contixi Tixi Viracocha Pachaya Chachi Pachacamac. Okay. Well, the full name really like means, and I will read it because it's very long. Great Lord, eternal splendor, source of life, knowledge, and maker of the world. And Tiki also has like different translations and different there's interpretations and well depends to the people. But if there's something that well the worshippers of Tiki like feel about him is that he is the creator of human beings. He's creator. So well, we have here two gods creators. And also physically, Tiki and Viracocha look so alike. When you see pictures of both, like for example, Tiki has this very big head, smaller body. Now the arms are always like little, big eyes, for example, and our god Viracocha has big head, small body, small arms, big eyes. So, well, curious, right? So, well, according to the legend in Mangareva, which because it's the most distant island, Antonio de Busto believes is Aguachumbi, or the island of away, or the island the most distant. So the story, the legend about this lord, this great king, says that well he came to that place with a big group of people across a section of the island. It's basically a group of islands, and in the south there is a pass that is called the Pass of Te Ava Nui o Tupa, okay, in the local language, which means the Great Pass of Tupa. Okay, well, and also it's sort of like looking to the east. So well, seems that well we have another Tupa over there, and probably in this location is where he obtained these dark-skinned people. Well, this section is still Polynesia, and the chronicles mention like black people, like African people. But it was very common that in those times and still nowadays that many of these groups of people used to sail back and forth into territories of, for example, Melanesia, and Melanesians probably got into the Polynesia. Melanesians are heavily pigmented, like way more pigmented. They look like Africans. If you're able to see pictures of them online, you're going to understand what I'm saying. Well, these Melanesians, well, probably were not from that location, uh, but they were somehow there, and Tupac found them so interesting, and he took them, sorry, with him as trophies, some form of trophies, because also this trip was a trip of investigation. It was a trip of discovery. It was a trip of adventure, not necessarily of conquest, not expansionist, but it was just to see what was the way. And also he needed to bring evidence of this to his father, because in that time his father, Pachacutec, was like ruling the empire. Well, he took these black people from there probably, and he continued sailing. And now, well, we are on the way back, and he was able finally to visit the second island mentioned in the chronicles, which is known nowadays as Rapa Nui, or Easter Island. Belongs to Chile, by the way, but according to the chronicles, and Del Busto also, this was Nina Chumbi. And also keep in mind that, well, that location has volcanoes, extinct volcanoes, but, well, that's a volcanic zone. So probably that's the reason why the fire is mentioned in the description of the name of the island. And well, there is no legend of King Tupac there, even though the word Tupac exists. I'll tell you in a moment what it means. But there is an interesting legend of, for example, no, a king, like, that was the son of the sun, that will visit them. And this son of the sun, and if you know the Incas, you know they are children of the sun. This king came on gigantic, like, tortoises, uh, from the sea. No? So there was a big group of them, and we imagine also those balsas being at least 150. So there were many, and they visited this island. There were many of them, and they were probably like taken, like, the locals by surprise of these visitors. Also, there is legend that mentions that at some point there were leaders, local leaders of that location that had big ears, and this is a tradition also the Incas had, and not really everybody, like the leaders had the elongated, stretching earlobes at the time of the arrival of the conquistadors. It was really a sign of status for men to have their ears pierced and also stretching. So probably, like, and the legend also says that, well, there was a time when there were like long-eared men who ruled, and they were defeated by the short-eared men. So, according to the theory of Del Busto, maybe there was a little, like, group left in the island of Incas, left, appointed and left there intentionally by Túpac Yupanqui. And, well, these people had, well, long ears. They were the rulers. They ruled for some generations until later a group from Polynesia, like, took the island, the short-eared men. So the legend says that this king, or this son of the sun, which in the local language, I'm reading this for you, name Mahuna Te Ra, Mahuna Te Ra, which means son of the sun. He took one princess from the island, and well, also, well, the island was inhabited, by the way. So he took a princess from the island, and the story says that he took her to a land of gray skies and she was very, very sad because, well, she came from a place where there's blue sky every day, and she got into a place with, let's say, dark gray sky. Um, Probably this means nothing to you because you're not from Lima, but if you were me, this would make so much sense because the coast of Peru, thanks to the humboldt current, there's high humidity in the coast. This humidity never condenses, never turns into rain. It's just trapped in the city by the hills, and we have 6 months of gray sky in Lima and in most of the coast, central south coast of Peru. There's lots of grayness, so it makes sense to us. It's really an indicator that the story mentions, like someone that was able to see, like, come from the Polynesia and have a shock in Lima, in the Peruvian coast. Anyways, so the son of the sun, like, no Tupac, like the king legend that we see in the other islands. We have the son of the sun, but we have Tupac also. The word Tupac doesn't mean king there. It means watchtower. Watchtower, especially to observe turtles. That there's a season, so far I know, of turtles that visit the island of Rapa Nui. So these towers that are about almost 30 of them in the island, they are towers for observation, and they are named Tupac. Hmm? So, well, and last but not least, as a proof, let's say, or evidence of the possible presence of the Incas in the island, we have a place called Vinapu in the island, Rapa Nui, which I hope you can visit online, this site. It's incredible the similarity it has with anywhere in Cusco, anywhere built by the Incas in the imperial style of the Incas, so in the most sophisticated style. Like, you can compare that sort of like marae, because it's a marae, it's supposed to be like an altar made by the Polynesians, but if you see it, like, trust me, that is Inca. Like, it's like perfectly cut stones. Like, there's no space between the stones, even to put a string of hair, like, insert between the stones. No possibility of that. It's like Inca 100%. But it's not made with the stone Machu Picchu because we don't have that stone there. They had to use local stones, and I'm referring probably to volcanic stones, more like sandy and easy also to work and to carve. So, well, that's probably how they made them, the Inca and his men, as an altar. And probably they were making these altars to the sun during all the way. But we don't have any other islands where there is evidence of the Incas, nor in the legends or in the let's say, architecture. And also, like, them being able to see those islands, if the story is true, and because we unfortunately are not able really to prove, not even with the presence of Vinapu in Rapa Nui, like, that was Inca, because we need all the type of sophisticated technologies to do that. But even though, like, if with this very, very little amount of, like, possibilities in these two islands, we are lucky still, no? Because they could just be lost in the sea, no, go nowhere, no, somehow, like, to non-navigated islands, but they were able to meet islands with people, and, well, the stories were passed, like, of the experience of meeting the Inca, passed generation to generation until these days. Oh, by the way, there's a really interesting dance also in Mangareva that is called the Dance of the King Tupac, that also mentions the visit of the king to the island. So he was not really just one night. He must have been like a longer stay in Mangareva. Well, and after that he returned according to the theory of El Busto, Túpac Yupanqui, returned successfully, of course, with success, and like after lots of adventures, to the Tawantinsuyo, but he didn't have gold, and he couldn't come back empty-handed. So he probably headed north of nowadays Peru to the Chan Chan site. It belonged to the Chimu culture, rich in gold, and quite like recently annexed into the Incan territory, the Incan realm, and he probably got their gold and the golden chair or the metal chair. Later on, he was able to carry with him back to Cusco and to present to his father as trophies of this adventure. No? So he was not in the presence of his father probably for a long time, maybe a year, and the moment when he returned to Cusco was like a big party and big event, and that really, like, that story that was told to the people who were there in Cusco is the story that later on the chroniclers listened and also took in their documents, took note from. So thank you so much for watching this long video. I hope you enjoyed to learn about this mystery. There are many, many more upcoming mysteries. Oh, by the way, I just forgot. What about the horses? We missed about the mystery, also explain the mystery of the horses. So the Busto mentions that maybe there were not horses. Instead, there were sea lions. And the Inca was not a man from the sea, was not a man from the coast. He was from the Andes, and probably coming to the coast of Peru, coming to the south of the coast of Peru, nowadays Peru, of course, Peru didn't exist in the time of the Incas, and seeing those gigantic sea lions that were like huge, and we're talking about like 3 meters long in some cases, the male ones, those big, beautiful faces, it really was shocking for him, surprising for him, like such monsters. So probably those were the horses that he was able to take home to Cusco. Okay, so, and we're talking about maybe like just bones of them as a way, of course, to preserve them and show them to his father. Okay, so if you want to learn more about all the Peruvian mysteries of the past, hope to have you in my next video. I do also different events about history in also different platforms. And I say different because sometimes they're about like history, sometimes they're about mysteries, sometimes they are about like untold history. Also, I love to talk about Peru, so stay tuned for tuning, watching my other events, joining live on them. Sometimes they're on Zoom. So I will be leaving in the description box for this video a link to my calendar of events. So look at the upcoming events there, and hope you enjoy this long video, but also with something new for you all, a little bit of new history. I hope entertaining as well for you all. Well, take care and best to you all. Bye bye.